We've got a really cool session lined up. Dustin Brackett's the CEO of HIVE Digital Strategy, and he's going to be talking about implementing a growth strategy for your website. And this really resonated with me. I think it's really timely because, for lack of better words, I think we can all benefit from our websites working harder for us right now. And what he's going to be talking about is kind of shifting from your view of having your website being like a set it and forget it, and really having more of like a structured process in place so that you're constantly iterating on it and optimizing and improving it and driving more results. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dustin. I know we've got some trivia and surprises going on later, so stay tuned for that in the chat. But Dustin, if you want to share your screen, and you can take it from here.
Yeah, and thanks, Trey. Just forewarning, we talked about the smoke and all that. My allergies are going crazy, so if I happen to sneeze in the middle of it, I'm sorry, you can't catch my COVID through Zoom. All right. Well, cool. So what we're going to be talking about, like Trey had mentioned, is kind of implementing a growth strategy for your website. We'll talk through, if you're planning on rebuilding a website, or if you want to continue using your current website and just make it work harder for you. We'll kind of talk about both of those situations. Oh, here we go. But first, just a little introduction of myself. I'm Dustin Brackett. I'm the CEO and founder of HIVE Digital Strategy and Buzz On Demand Marketing. I founded HIVE in January of 2014, and we became a HubSpot solutions partner in 2015. We're now a platinum HubSpot solutions partner, and we kind of focus on the technology, health and wellness, consulting, and education industries. I founded Buzz On Demand Marketing in February of 2019, and Buzz is really focused on small businesses, solopreneurs, things like that. And it's really an online marketplace for marketing and sales deliverables. And a few kind of fun facts about myself. So I am a Colorado native. I've lived in Colorado all but 6 months of my life, but I have never skied or snowboarded. So I get a lot of grief for that. I don't like the snow. So like going up on a mountain and falling in it just sounds a little awful to me. I also played 10 years of semi-professional football in the Colorado Football Conference, played all throughout Colorado against some really great talent, ex-NFL guys. If anyone's a CU Buffs fan, Bobby Purify, I played against him for several years, kind of a local legend. So this is a picture from one of my last seasons. I'm number 87 there. And, it was a ton of fun, and I miss it like every single day. I've got my helmet over here next to my desk. But it felt like the league was getting younger and I was getting older, and it was taking much longer to heal. And fun fact about this picture is on this play, I actually broke my collarbone. It was like the third play of the game, just landed awkwardly. And I played the whole rest of the game with a broken collarbone, obviously not knowing it. But it became evident pretty quickly that it was time to hang up the cleats and that I was football old. Just a quick disclaimer here. If you're a GIF hater, this presentation's probably not for you. I had a lot of fun making this presentation. So there's GIFs all over, some of my favorite shows. We mentioned Schitt's Creek, like there's the Schitt's Creek one in there. So just forewarning, you're gonna see lots of GIFs. And so before we dive in, one thing I want everyone to kind of consider is, is your website your best sales asset and your best sales rep? Because that's what we're really talking about today, right? We need our websites to do more. And with, COVID and everyone being at home and everyone being online, our websites need to work harder for us. And so if it's not really our best asset or sales rep, then we're missing out. And just a quick agenda of what we'll talk about today. So some of the myths about websites and website design, the traditional website process from design and even management. We'll introduce growth-driven design. We'll talk about how you can build a scalable website that grows with your business. how you can implement growth-driven design starting today on your current website, marketing, so sales and marketing alignment and how that kind of impacts your overall website experience, how you can manage and include your executive team, and some tools and processes in order to do all of this. And so before we kind of get into it, one question, and please put your answers in the chat, like, give me some insight into, why does your business have a website? We ask this question quite a bit when people come to us for a new website or website redesign or whatever the case may be. And we ask that question and we kind of get this like goofy look, like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, what do you mean, why does my business have a website? Like, we have to, right? We hear, those are typically the answers that we get, that, well, we're supposed to. We have to have a website. Like, everyone's expecting us to have a website. But very rarely do we get the answer of to educate our consumers or to generate new leads. And I think that's like a huge issue. Like, that's a major problem when we're not considering our best asset as a lead generation tool or something that can help our buying process.
We did get a couple of lead gen. We have one, education of our industry, showcase our work, and credibility.
There you go. So those are better answers than we typically get. So gold stars to everyone. So then, like, let's talk about some myths or like misconceptions about websites. And these things we hear all the time, and they make us want to do like a little face palm, right? Like, they're things that we have to grow out of as an industry, like, or as our whole world needs to kind of grow out of these misconceptions, because they're stuck in 1998 or decades ago, but we still hear them all the time. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to move like the camera around. I'm seeing everyone. There we go. Okay, so how about I just finished my website, right? Like, we launched the website, it's finished. When in reality, like, your website should be kind of a living, breathing tool for you, right? It has to be improved. Like, if it's finished, the understanding there is like, okay, it's done, like nothing else can be done to it. It can't get any better. But there's no such thing as the perfect website, right? Like, my website's not perfect. Apple's website's not perfect. Google's website's not perfect. Like, the perfect website doesn't exist. So your website should never really be finished. And one that we probably hear the most, which it makes me want to like scream when I hear it, but like, I just need an online brochure, right? That's very much like 2000, right? Like, oh, we just need something up, and so people are going to find us, and then give just a little bit of information, just to like pique their interest, right? Well, that's not how the world works anymore, right? You have to treat your website as your best asset and best sales rep, which means that you need to provide the answers and information that people are looking for and create a lead generation strategy around it. And a brochure just doesn't do that. And I know exactly what my website should be, right? And we hear this a lot from like an executive team or a marketing director that, eats, sleeps, and breathes like the business, right? It inside and out, forwards and backwards. But the problem is, like, you're probably not your ideal customer, right? And so if you're just considering your view of the business and what you know about it and your gut and your preferences, you're not building the website for your users. And so we need to start focusing on the users, focusing on data, and less on our gut. And definitely my least favorite is, I don't want to give away too much info, right? I want a website up there, I want people to come to it, and then I want them to call me. Is there anyone that actually does that anymore? Like, does anyone actually go to a website and you're like, oh, dang, like, they didn't give me any of the info I was looking for, I might as well call them. Like, that's just not real, right? That that worked when consumers needed us, right? They needed us more years ago, where, you know, they would call a salesperson, and the salesperson would guide them from the very start of a sales process all the way through closing, right? But that's just not the case anymore. So how about a little trivia? So we're giving away Starbucks gift card here for, you know, put it in the chat. What percentage of the sales cycle is complete before a prospect ever reaches out to your company? Give a couple minutes here. Yvonne is scouring the comments to see who's going to win some Starbucks.
Keep them coming. We're getting some close. No one's on the money yet.
Patrick, I think that's really close.
I definitely fall in the 100% range.
Right?
The least amount of talking on the phone as possible.
Great point. This is an average. This may not be how we do it.
Good question, Eunice. Yeah. Are you allowed to go over, or do you bust?
We got one, Yvonne?
Yes.
We can go closest.
Yeah.
So before a prospect ever reaches out to you, 57% of your sales cycle is complete, right? So that means that over half of your whole sales process is done before you even know that person exists, before they ever reach out to you. You know, this isn't, you know, 10 years ago where they had to call a salesperson. They had to have a salesperson guide them through the education process, and then deciding on a tool or a solution, and then comparing competitors and all of those things. They can do that themselves. Like Google and all of the information online has really enabled consumers to take back control of the sales process. And so if we're just expecting people to come to your website, you're going to give them just the bare amount of information, and then they're going to pick up the phone, like, you're going to be sorely mistaken. So the traditional website process, what does that look like today? And so this is the way that it's always been, right? This is how websites have been built and the process for decades now, right? So we build a website, it sits up mostly unchanged for 2 years and 7 months. So the average lifespan of a website today is 2 years and 7 months, right? And then we get into a rebuild, and a rebuild lasts 4 to 8 months. And then we launch a new site, and then we do it all over again, right? That site lives for 2 years and 7 months. We get into another long rebuild, launch another website. And so it's this like ugly cycle of every 3 years, we have to write another big check, go through that painful rebuild process, and to launch a website that's a little bit better than what we had before. And other issues that we have with kind of the way it's always been, right? So they're built for the wrong person. We build websites focused on the preference of the CEO or the board or the marketing director or the designer or developer, but we're not really considering who's actually spending money with us. We're not considering how our users want to use our website. What are they doing on our website? What's the next thing that they want to see? There's limited or no new content. And I'm not talking about, oh, we add a blog post once a month, or, you know, we added a new image here or a video here. Like, we're not, typically with websites today, we're not making substantial changes in order to improve user experience and to get people to want to come back. It's lacking a lead generation strategy. And I think that almost every business would probably look at me and say, oh, we have a lead generation strategy, right? Like, don't you see like the contact sales button, or the schedule a demo button, or, you know, the free trial button? Like, sure, like those are lead generation, but it's all super bottom of the funnel, right? Those are people that are ready to buy. And the percentage of people that come to your website that are ready to buy is a small percentage. And so we're not really looking at it from a holistic point of view, that we're saying, okay, regardless of where you are in the process, regardless of where, what content you need or what information you need to see in order to get to that next step. We're skipping those first two pieces where we're just saying, if you're ready to buy, that's great, click this button. And that's your whole lead generation process. And then they're not data driven. And so I'm not just talking about like, oh, we have Google Analytics on our website, right? I'm talking about how do we understand how people are using the website, who's using the website, things like that, in order to make informed decisions. Now let's talk about growth-driven design. So growth-driven design is really a smarter approach to website design and management, where we're putting lead generation and data at the forefront so that we can continuously create a better website for our users. Because what we're looking at is, instead of the website being up for 2 years and 7 months and we're not really doing anything with it, it's just kind of sitting there, we're improving it month over month, right? Because we're focused on our users and how they are and want to use our website. Like, what is the path that they want to take and how do we make it easier for them? We have better data because we're considering heat maps and user data so that we can see, okay, how far are they scrolling on a page? What is their next click? Where's their mouse going? And even polls and things like that, so that we can understand, are they finding what they're looking for and how do we improve? How do we get better? It's scalable because as we're improving the website month over month, when we get to that 2 years and 7 months or that 3 years down the road, when we would have been launching a new website, our current website's already better than what we would have built anyway, because we're considering the user, we're making those changes for them every month. We're putting lead generation at the forefront, and then our conversion performance goes up, right? Because we're not just focused on, hey, yeah, we have this thing that we want you to have. It's, hey, what are you looking for? And let us provide it, and let us put that in front of you. So we're really considering, what do you care about and how do you want to consume it? So here's that same graph that we had before, right? It's the traditional process of website. It's up for 2 years and 7 months, 4 to 8 month rebuild, new website. That one's up for 2 years and 7 months, rebuild, third website. But in every month or every iteration, we're making a better website, right? Like, you never put out a new website that's worse than the one you had before, but we're looking 3 years down the road, right? It's taking 3 years to make that step into a website that's better, but is it so much better that it justifies that 3 year period? And instead, we're looking at growth-driven design where we're taking the staircase up, right? We're making these small changes every month that makes a better website, and we just continue to build upon it. So by the time we get to that 3 year mark, our website's already better than what we would have launched. And so that all sounds great, right? Like, it all in concept, like, yeah, we should build a website for our users, and oh, sure, we need lead generation for all stages of the funnel. Don't tell HubSpot that I said the word funnel. But it all sounds great in concept, right? But here's some actual numbers, right? Here's some data behind it. And this is from HubSpot's State of Growth-Driven Design survey. And so what it found and what it looked at is websites that were built from a traditional model and growth-driven design, right? And so within 6 months, what they saw was growth-driven design websites had almost 17% more leads and over 11% more revenue. This is just 6 months in, right? And so, you've probably launched it in the first couple months. And so you've had, 4 months there that you're focused on improving your website. And this just shows that as we're focused on the user and as we're actually making these incremental changes every month, we're producing better results. Because the focus is, we want a website that grows with us, right? 10 years down the road, like, do we want to be on the same website that we launched today or had today? We've just made it incrementally better over all of that time, to the point where 10 years down the road, this website is so much better than the day we launched it. Or do we want to be on our 4th iteration, right? Our 4th new build? And I think it all starts with the strategy. And I think this is a piece that's missing from most websites. Like when we hear from businesses that want a new website, like typically it's an aesthetics thing, right? Like, oh, our website's ugly and outdated, right? We need something prettier, and we need, when people come to our website, we need them we need to feel like a big business, or we need to feel like we know what we're talking about. And so the design needs to be good. It needs to look good. But we're not really thinking about our website as a tool that we can put, goals behind. And sure, there's probably some like, oh yeah, we need to increase website traffic, or we want to have this many downloads or whatever. But we need to actually sit down and set up a strategy to achieve specific goals for our website. And that all starts with kind of reviewing user behavior and even interviewing customers. This piece, it gets forgotten a lot, and because it does take some effort, but interview your customers. Call up your current customers, past customers, new customers, old customers. They'll tell you, like, are they finding what they're looking for on your website? And if they're not, they're going to tell you. And if they are, they're going to tell you. So use that feedback, and it's out there. And even with Hotjar that we'll talk about in a bit, like there's polling options that can pop up and say, hey, did you find what you're looking for? What else could be put on this page that would be helpful? Things like that. And then regardless of whether you're starting a new build or you want to use your current website and just implement GDD on it, I'm sure you have a laundry list of things that you want on your website or you want out of your website. But you have to kind of prioritize, right? We don't have unlimited resources. None of us have, 1,000-person team that we can just snap our fingers and go to work, or, billions of dollars that we can say, oh yeah, whatever we can dream up, we can build. Like that's not realistic. So we have to create that list of must-haves. Like what's going to make the biggest impact for us to implement right away. And if you are building a new website, you decided it's time, we need a new build. That's when we come to the launch pad, right? It's not perfect. We're not building the perfect website because nobody's building the perfect website. That's not a real thing. But it's going to be better than what you currently have. And we need to get it up quickly, right? We want to launch it within 60 days because the longer it sits in development, we're just missing out on all that data. And so I mentioned earlier, the average website development process is 4 to 8 months, right? Well, think back 8 months ago. Like COVID wasn't impacting us. Like think about how crazy that is. Like 8 months ago, COVID was a thing. It was a thing like in China, but none of us thought about it at all, right? It wasn't impacting us. We were still going about our days like in person. This hug would have been in person, right? And so just to think about your website being in development from February till now, think about how much has changed, and think about all of that data you would have missed out on as well. Like we're seeing more traffic online during the last 8 months than we have ever, right? So we would have missed out on so much important data there. And then really the backbone to growth-driven design is the continuous improvement process. So that's where we're going to review the data and heat maps, identify our target personas, and prioritize them. So we need to understand if we're going to make changes, who are these changes intended for? And then we're going to develop hypotheses and bucket them into groups based on expected impact. So each month, like you're not going to have one hypothesis, right? You're not going to have one idea that, oh, we should maybe change this piece. You're probably going to have several of them or dozens of them even. And then we need to figure out, okay, all of those things, everything from, hey, we need to build a new page to, we're going to add a chat bot to, oh, we need to change the color of our title tag, our headings, right? Like all and everything in between. Like you're going to have those ideas, but we need to think about, okay, what's going to actually impact our users? What's going to help them find what they're looking for and convert more leads? And probably changing the color of your H1 tag is not going to accomplish that. So, we need to figure out what's going to move the needle, and then we're going to implement and test. So again, just, last time looking at what the launch looks like for a traditional versus a growth-driven design website. So say today you decide, okay, we do need a new website. We're going to start this process. We get to December, and at best, like at very best, your traditional website, you know, the way it's always been done, it's half complete, right? We're 2 months into it. Your developer or agency or whoever you're working with is Superman, and they're on that low end, right, of the 4 to 8 month time frame. But with growth-driven design, like we've launched that Launchpad website. We have a new website up. It's not perfect. We know that it's not perfect and that it's never going to be perfect, but we've got a new website up there and we're starting to track data. So when we get to January 2021, which, you know, we're all counting down the minutes till 2020 goes away. But we get to January 2021, your traditional website's still not live, right? You're still in development. You're not collecting any new data. You're not converting more leads. You know, you're just in development still. But with growth-driven design, you've already implemented your first month of continuous improvement changes. And then as we look forward to April 2021, your website's launched, right? That's 6 months down the road. You know, it's right in the middle of that process. Maybe it's a couple months earlier, maybe it's a couple months later, but you know, April 2021, you have your website launched. But with growth-driven design, we've already gone through the process of continuous improvement for 4 months. And then as we look all the way down to November 2023, which isn't that far away, right? We're talking 2 years and 7 months from when that was launched. It sits mostly unchanged on that traditional side. Whereas with growth-driven design, every single month, we're making it better. So by the time we actually get to November 2023, instead of it being time to start over like it would be on the traditional side, it's significantly better than the day that we launched it. So we're not even thinking rebuild, right? We're thinking, damn, our website is good. Like it's converting so many more leads than we were before. And then, so how can we, if we have a website that we love today, right? Or we just launched a website or whatever the case may be, we want to implement growth-driven design on our website today. Some steps that I think are important to take here are we need to audit the website and user experience. We really need to understand where are areas for improvement, how are people using the website, how can we implement some of those must-haves so that we can move the needle. We need to add tools to track user behavior, develop a strategy and goals around our website if we don't already have those. We're going to create those hypotheses each month based on the data that we're seeing. And then we're going to implement, test, and repeat, because every hypothesis that we make isn't going to be right. That's like, you just need to kind of set the ego aside, right? You're not always going to be right. And everything that you do is not going to be perfect. So we're going to have to implement, test, repeat. Auditing your website and user experience. So there's a few easy things that I think you can do right away to really get an understanding of where your website sits today. The first one is Website Grader. If you haven't used this before, it is a HubSpot tool. It's free to use. It's at website.grader.com. And it's going to give you a high-level overview of things like your website performance, SEO, security, things like that, and some actionable tips that you can take right away to make your website a little bit better, right? From a technical standpoint, how do we make our website better? And then an SEO audit. And I don't care what industry you're in or whether you believe in SEO or not, SEO is important, right? This isn't Field of Dreams. Just because you build a website doesn't mean that they'll come. And so if you can't be found, you're hindering your business, right? If when somebody is searching for what you do, if they can't be found, you may as well not even have a website. So run an SEO audit, and there's a ton of tools out there. A few here that you know, we've used in the past. So Moz, SEMrush, SE Ranking. Like get an SEO audit, and typically they go pretty in depth where you can see, okay, hey, we've got broken links, and we've got more than one H1 tag, and you know, page speed, and all of those things that go into SEO. But it's going to give you really that good insight into, okay, how can we make this better from a search engine optimization standpoint? And then from the lead generation piece, and if you're using HubSpot, like this is all easy information to find, but I think people forget that it's there. But audit your forms and CTAs. Like, are people seeing them? Are they engaging with them? Like, what is your click rate? What are your conversion rates? Are you asking too much from your forms? Like, do you have too many fields that people have to fill out for what you're offering? Are your CTAs not being seen? Just going through that data and saying, okay, hey, these CTAs are working, these forms are working, but these aren't. What's the difference? And then really, I think the most fun piece, and where I really love to like dive in and geek out and like spend way too much time, is the user experience piece. And so we prefer Hotjar. Hotjar they have a free version. It's a heat mapping tool, and it does integrate with HubSpot, though most of what you're tracking is aggregate data, right? You're not tracking the individual user except for polling options. So if you have a poll on a page and somebody fills it out, that can be integrated directly to their contact record. But the three kind of main pieces or the pillars to Hotjar that we're really focused on are heat mapping, click tracking, and mouse path. So heat mapping is a scale from like high to low, what percentage of your people are seeing a specific section, right? How far are they scrolling on your web page? So from red to blue, hot to cold, how far down are people willing to scroll? Because that's going to give you an idea of if you have an important CTA or a form and you're like, hey, that one's not performing well, what's going on? But then you look at your heat map and see, oh, well, 30% of people are seeing it, right? Only 30% of people are willing to scroll that far on the page. There's an issue. We have to look at it from a different perspective and say, okay, like maybe the CTA is not bad, the placement is bad. And then click tracking. So looking at, this is the same kind of thing, right? We have a heat map of what is the next click. So from each page, what is the most likely next click? And we're seeing, where the red is that's where most people are going to. That's where we're getting the most clicks. So it can uncover things like, okay, what is the next most logical step for this person, and how do we make that path easier? It can also uncover things like, hey, people are clicking on this element that's not clickable. Like, we're creating a bad user experience because people think this is going to do something, but it's not doing. What do they think it's going to do? How do we improve that? And then one of my favorites is the mouse path. And most people kind of overlook it because what it shows is where the mouse is going on the page, right? Where the average person's mouse goes as they scroll your page. And it doesn't sound that interesting until you really think about, okay, wherever your mouse is where your eyes are. And so if you're not leading people to the place where you want their eyes to be, this is going to tell you that. It's going to uncover those issues of, hey, people really need to be looking at this, but they're not going there. How do we change the layout? How do we change the design so that we draw more attention to where they should be looking? And then reviewing your data and KPIs. Like, this is a piece, there's so much data out there that I think it's almost like analysis paralysis kind of thing, right? There's so much out there that we get into the habit of like, oh, okay, like, let's just look at the high level overview. Okay, we had a good month, website traffic was up, leads were up, whatever. But we don't dive into the nitty gritty because there's just so much of it. But that's where if we set the strategy and we set the goals behind it, then we know what we're looking for. And that can be things around new website visitors. Like, are we getting enough people, new blood to the website, right? And if we're not, then our data is probably skewed and we have an issue, maybe not necessarily even with our website content or design or layout, but we have an attraction problem, right? We're not attracting people to the website for their first time. And repeat website visitors. If people aren't coming back to your website, you have an issue. If people don't come back, they don't want to be back, right? They're not coming back to your website because they didn't have a good experience. They didn't find what they're looking for. And that signals a major on-page issue. And then other things like website sessions. And it also can't be looked at in a vacuum, right? Because if I went to you if I went to Tim Cook at Apple, right, and said, hey, you had 10,000 visitors to your website this month, right? Like, he's throwing things, like he'd be he's firing somebody before I even walk out of his office, right? Because he's pissed. Like, we only had 10,000 visitors, but if I went to, you know, the local mom and pop auto mechanic and said, hey, 10,000 people were on your website this month, like, they're popping champagne, right? They're so excited because they just had one of their best month ever, probably. So you need to also look back and not just look at your data in a vacuum, but look at it as a trend. And then other things to consider are, you know, average number of page views. Are people getting deeper into your website? Conversion rates, form and CTA effectiveness. Don't just build a form or a CTA and let it sit, right? Understand, like, you need to understand how people are engaging with it and if it's working. Like, is a button better than an image CTA or a hyperlink? Like, you need to test those things and see how your users want to interact with your CTAs and forms. And then heat mapping, click tracking, and mouse path. Who are you making your changes for? So hopefully you all have personas that you've developed. You know, we're talking more than just like a target demographic of, oh, we sell to women 35 to 50, right? Like, we need to have those personas built out, but you probably have multiple personas. Like, for Hive, we have 6 different personas, but that doesn't mean that they're all created equal, right? We have to figure out who is our primary target persona and how do we engage them? Because when we're making those incremental changes, we don't want to be making significant changes to the website for our 5th or 6th persona that's going to have a negative impact on our first. So figuring out who are most important and making changes for them first is really critical. So developing the hypothesis. This is a framework that we use when we develop our hypotheses. You know, it doesn't have to be done this way, but it's worked out really well for us that we can really insert what we're trying to do and test these things. So for our target persona, visiting a specific page, we believe that changing a specific website element into whatever the change will be will result in X, right? And then we justify it. So we believe this to be true because of data or research or a previous experiment, right? We're not doing this just because, oh, hey, there's something new and shiny, right? We need to understand, okay, what do we expect this impact to be? Because that's also going to help us prioritize what changes we actually make. And here's a real example. So this is one that we did for the Hive Digital Strategy website. And one of our primary personas is SaaS SAM. So software as a service SAM. You know, we work a lot in technology, like I mentioned before. And so for SaaS SAM, visiting our homepage, we believe that changing our journey selection module, which is the first module that when you come to our website, it's the first thing you see on there, into a smart content module focused on demo requests, because we know SaaS SAM has a major issue with demo requests, right? That's a primary problem for him. He needs more demo requests. And if we can focus on that, we can get his attention. And we believe that that will result in homepage to our inbound marketing page click-through rate increase by 10%. And we believe this to be true because we've done trials with smart content for other industries, and those have resulted in 8 to 20% increases in click-through rate. So you can see, like, we're not only saying, okay, we want to make a change for this persona, here's what the change is, but we're also saying, here's what we expect that impact to be, so we can prioritize these as they come through. Because it's probably not just you making the hypothesis, right? Like, it's going to be people on your team saying, hey, what if we did this, right? Let's build those hypotheses and then figure out, okay, we think that we can get these 3 done this month, and here's the expected impact. And there's a ton of opportunities with smart content in the HubSpot CMS. If you haven't looked at the CMS, if the HubSpot CMS, or if your website's not on the HubSpot CMS, highly recommend it. We moved our website to the HubSpot CMS, I think in April, and it's been amazing. Like, our traffic, our conversions, everything has gone up, but it's also been a great experience to be able to easily transform our website and do things like smart content that you can't do with other CMS products. So marketing and synergy throughout your team. So sales and marketing alignment, right? For too many businesses, it's marketing versus sales, right? They're in their own silos. It's marketing, giant brick wall, and sales, right? Marketing just throws leads over the brick wall, and that's the end of it. And we all understand that, like, the sole purpose for marketing is to create those leads, right? You need to feed sales pipelines, but we can't look at it as that just one-way street. Sales also has to be involved with marketing in supporting their efforts, because your sales team is who is on the front line. They're the ones talking to your customers and your prospects, and they know the sound bites and the problems and the issues that they have. And communicating those back to marketing helps marketing create better content. It creates better leads. It creates more closed deals. And the website is vital for both, right? Like, marketing can't create the leads that they need to without a great website. Sales can't close those leads because they don't exist. So how do we do this? There's my Schitt's Creek gif. First, we got to tear down that wall, right? Like, we have to get sales and marketing to understand that they're playing on the same team. Their focus is the same. They need great leads, closed business, right? So tearing down that wall, getting sales and marketing on the same page and in the same meetings is important. And we love to involve, and we love seeing businesses that involve their sales team in their content meetings, because if they can get that insight, they can create better content. And then establish solid service level agreements. We need to understand, at what point does marketing hand off a lead to sales? What will sales do with that lead afterwards? And what is going to be the output from sales to marketing in those content meetings? Like, how often are they going to be in those meetings, and what is going to be their contribution? And really, the hardest one in almost any business is managing and including your executive teams, right? Like, I'm a CEO, I have strong opinions. Yvonne will attest to that, right? I have these things that come up, that I have this idea in my head of, like, oh, I know exactly what this is going to be. Like, here's what it has to be, but I'm not my customer. And so it's important to just have that gut check sometimes and say, hey, that's great. And I think, your executive team has a lot of great input, but we've got to get buy-in that we're not building this for them, right? We're not building this for your board of directors or your marketing director or sales director or CEO. We're building this for our customers. And so we need to look at what they want above all else. And we want, get that high level input from your executive team and include them, in those content meetings as you can. But we just have to get that buy-in from the start, or your growth-driven design process is never going to succeed. And some tools and resources that I think are important, whether you're starting a new website, whether you're implementing GDD onto your current website. So heat mapping, like I mentioned, Hotjar is what we prefer. We love it. Almost all of our clients use it. We use it for ourselves. Really gives us that insight into how people are using and want to use our website. Lucky Orange is another one that does also have an integration with HubSpot. And we haven't used Lucky Orange, but we've heard great things. Analytics. So, invest some time in your Google Analytics and your HubSpot data, Databox, all of those different tools that you have to gather that information. Spend the time to understand, how do you get the data that you need? Because there is so much out there. And I think that's a big issue with Google Analytics, is people see the benefit when they first start, and then they're like, I'm overwhelmed. There's too much data here. How the hell do I find what I actually need? It gets confusing, and then people don't use it. Take a course, watch a YouTube video. There's so much out there. Figure out how you get the data that you want to see out of Google Analytics. HubSpot Academy. If you're not active in HubSpot Academy and your team's not, I highly encourage it. Get people trained through there. There's so much good data, so many good courses, and there is a growth-driven design certification as well. So if you have a developer or even your marketing and sales teams, like, get them involved in that growth-driven design process, get their buy-in as well. From a CMS standpoint, most websites aren't built like they were 10 years ago, where it was, we needed a developer that was going to build our website from scratch. They were going to build it line by line of code. Like, that's not realistic anymore, because our marketing and sales teams aren't typically coders, right? So when we need to make those changes, we have to have a tool that they can actually go in, make those changes easily, and measure the impact. So HubSpot CMS, like I said, if you haven't looked at it, highly encourage it. It's come a long way from the HubSpot COS days. I don't know if any of you remember that from years ago, where it was kind of an afterthought product. They've spent a lot of time and money into developing the HubSpot CMS, and I've been super impressed. WordPress is the most widely known, and about a quarter of all websites in the world are built on WordPress. And then other resources, get all of your sales team involved, all of your marketing team, and then get user feedback. And this one can be a little bit difficult sometimes because it's a gut check, right? You're getting that feedback on, hey, we've spent all this time and these resources on making these changes to the website, executing on those hypotheses. Like, did they work, right? Did you like them? And the answer is not always going to be yes. And it's a total punch in the gut when that answer is no, but it's valuable information. So, put the ego aside and ask the question. And then there is a full website developed all about growth-driven design. It was done with HubSpot and another solutions partner. So it's growthdrivendesign.com. Tons of great educational resources there. Spend some time on there, get to understand the process. I think it'll really benefit everyone in the long term. Let's do a quick recap. So first, we have to forget about the word perfect, right? There's no such thing as a perfect website. Understand that, own it, and just make your website better, right? That's all we can hope for. We got to, that's, website or HubSpot's motto isn't grow perfect, right? Because there's no such thing. You can't get there. Perfect isn't reachable. It's grow better. Build and update your website based on user data, not guesses and not your internal preferences, right? Use that aggregate data, ask your customers, use actual information to make changes to your website. Put lead generation first, and that's at all stages, right? We need content for all stages of the funnel. Regardless of where someone is, you should have something for them. We need to gather as much user data as possible so that we can inform decisions, so we can make those incremental changes every month. Build everything for your target personas and specifically for your primary target personas. Focus on those high impact activities. Everything else can wait, right? Changing the color of your H1 tag on your page, like, that's probably not going to make a big impact. Don't get distracted by the shiny things. Focus on what's going to move the needle. And then make substantial changes to your website regularly. Don't just let it sit. That's the worst thing that we can do with our website. Involve your whole organization. So marketing, sales, executive, it's a team game. In order for this to work, in order for your company to grow, everyone's got to be bought in. And then never get satisfied. Still not perfect. And thank you all for joining today. I think we've got some time for Q&A. And I think there's, in the email recap or whatever, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to answer any of those questions.
And Dustin's also in our Boulder Hug group on LinkedIn, so you can always ask him questions there as well. Thanks, Dustin. That was great. Anyone have any questions? Especially, I'm anticipating a lot of tool-related questions. How many of you are already using heat mapping or some of the other tools that Dustin talked about?
I'm trying to get it implemented. I've been trying to get it implemented on our site since I started back in February. I can't tell you, like, I've been able to, in past lives, been able to use heat mapping tool to sell exactly why we need to make a change, why we need to move a call to action button to a certain place, or why we need to put stuff above the fold because people aren't scrolling that far. It's such a priceless tool. I can't even
Well, it's
stress
not
enough.
that expensive either, right? Like, getting into Hotjar, like it's not a huge investment, right? You're spending way more on your time and, HubSpot stack and, whatever your tools look like. You're spending way more on those things. This is just to help supplement it and help you get the most out of it. So you might as well give yourself like that advantage, right?
Well, and if you're increasing your conversions as a result, then it's paying for itself. It's just it's a
Right.
no-brainer. It's
right.
Well, and just a quick story on that. So one of our clients is a pretty traditional, their buyer personas are very traditional. They are very traditional and conservative. So when we added heat mapping, we all just assumed, the thing that we should never do, that everyone was accessing their website from their desktop. And they do service a lot of retail organizations. And so we didn't even think about optimizing for mobile and over desktop. And after heat mapping, it was really interesting to us that 80% of a certain page that they were it was a landing page they were trying to get people onto and filling out a form, was being accessed by mobile. And that was just mind-blowing to my client as well as myself. And as soon as we made the switch with the form being higher up, they immediately got conversions. It was pretty amazing. So loving heat mapping, just something that happened last month that I wanted to share. And totally agree with you that it is invaluable. Anyone else?
Well, and that's a great point, that through heat mapping, you can see, where that traffic's coming from. And so you can optimize based on, for your users again, what device are they most likely using? And you're going to see, like, there's going to be typically an overwhelming favorite for your company, right? And so you can focus on the data that you're seeing for mobile or for tablet or for, very few websites I think probably dominate on tablet, but, understanding how people are consuming your information is huge.
Yeah, back in my agency days, I can't tell you how many conversations I had with clients to show, 80 to 90% of your users are not using Outlook. So I'm not going to spend 3 hours to fix this stupid button because Outlook is stupid.
Outlook version 3 on iPhone, iPhone 4.
It's just not worth our time to worry about
But the CEO uses Outlook on iPhone 3.
Absolutely.
Dustin, I've got a question for you. So for people trying to navigate between if they want to do, a Launchpad website and then implement GTD from there versus just start with what they have and start iterating on that, what advice would you have for someone trying to make that decision?
Well, I think even if you decide we need a new website, right? There's still valuable information on your current site. So I think that adding heat mapping and starting to gather some of that data from your current website is just as important. Like, that should help to inform your new design, your new layout. So, just because you're adding growth-driven design processes onto the new site doesn't mean that you can't add them to the old site and help that inform your development process.
Thanks for that.
Anything...
We're in the process of redoing our website. In fact, I have a design review this afternoon. So, and our website designer is a HubSpot partner. And so I'm just surprised that none of this came up in any of our design conversations over the last 2 months. Like, if we would have implemented this process, we'd have a new website right now, but we don't. So,
well, and that's the hard part, is like, I think that everyone just kind of expects, oh, it's this long drawn out process, right? It's that 4 to 8 month process. I mean, we've heard horror stories that we've talked to clients that, oh, we've had a website in development for 1.5 years. And, it's mind boggling. And I think the problem is, whether it's the client or the agency or the developer, we get stuck on that perfect, right? It has to be perfect before it launches. And we have to have that conversation a lot with our clients and just say, hey, look, perfect's not real, right? We can just because we're going to launch it doesn't mean that we can't change things. And we are going to change things. We have to change things. And so getting it up and getting that data is more valuable than it sitting and waiting another few months.
I think for me too, having that data actually makes going through like design reviews with the creative team a lot easier, because now it's not like, you know, I think we should change this design element because I don't think it's going to work, you know, and the design team takes that as they don't like your work. Now you actually have something to stand on where it's like, this is what the data is telling us. Let's make a hypothesis about how we can make it better. And then it's a lot more of like a collaborative conversation as opposed to like, you know, I don't think that's the image we should use, or, you know, the form needs to be higher up, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And there's always so many cooks in the kitchen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so many opinions that come through, whether you're doing a website design internally or with an agency or whatever. Like there's just always opinions, which can also contribute to this website's taking forever to launch. So, but if you can point back to data and say, no, like, look, this is how people were using our previous website, we'd expect that to continue here. You know, that shuts down a lot of the, oh, but what if?
Yeah, I think the last thing you would want would be to launch the new website you just spent 8 months building, and then all of a sudden it's actually not even performing as well as the original one, right?
Yeah, or you just carried over all the problems that you were trying to resolve with a fresh new look because you didn't consider any of that. Which
happens so often that like, you know, a lot of times businesses think that, oh, launching a new website's like the cure-all, right? Because it's new, now it's going to work, right? And that's just not that's not how the world works.
So my question for you is on developing these hypotheses every month. Do you typically focus on just one, or do you do multiple hypotheses and cross-tab the results to really figure out what's most effective?
So the answer is typically either way. But what I think you need to think about is, one, your resources, because you're probably going to have a bunch of different hypotheses each month. You know, what can you actually get done, and then focus on those top ones. If you can make if you have the resources and time or whatever to implement multiple hypotheses, you need to have a structure to understand, so that you can understand what made the impact, right? Because you don't want to make a bunch of changes to a single page and then you don't know what actually affected the change, right? Or the growth, or whatever the case may be. So just being smart about, okay, if you're going to make multiple changes, ideally it's not to the same page or the same area of the page. You know, we don't want to make 5 changes to our header of the home page, and then we don't know which one of those, or if all of those, or if a couple of those actually made an impact.
Do you have common elements that you like to test every time, if it's just form fields or like a common playbook you go through?
I think anything that revolves around lead generation is typically the focus. Like if we can make some small changes here and there to CTAs or forms, or even our content around the lead generation processes, that's where I like to start. And you know, there's not really a like one size fits all, right? You have to test some of those things, and you have to figure out, okay, for our audience, what are the changes that are going to make an impact, or do we expect to make an impact? But I think those are typically where we would want to focus, and where our eyes go right away, right? How do we improve the lead generation piece? And there's a ton of A/B testing that can be done within HubSpot as well. So utilize that. I think that's an underutilized piece throughout HubSpot, not even just with your website or landing pages or thank you pages, but across the board, you know, email, all of that.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think if you were to tell someone to A/B test an email, it's a no-brainer. Of course, we're going to try, you know, another subject line, but then no one's doing it on the website. It's really interesting.
Right.
Yeah, I think
we A/B test CTAs all the time.
Yeah,
you
HubSpot
have
makes
to.
that so easy.
Yeah, and like you should, and like you can test different formats and you know, different language, and like there's so many cool things that you can do with it. But you know, we get into this set it and forget it kind of thing.
Yeah, one of the analogies that HubSpot used once was comparing it almost to like a product, like your website, like a product. Like what company would spend, you know, 3 years working on a product, launch it, and then never improve it ever again, or maybe they wait another 3 years. That's just really like not how it works. But it's funny when you
Yeah, that's a
compare like
great.
the traditional side versus like the growth-driven design side. It's like a no-brainer, but for some reason, just no one really, you know, thinks about it from that perspective.
Right, it's behind. Like, I mean, just thinking about like Nike, right? Like, if they were only coming out with a new shoe
Exactly.
or like updates to their technology once every 3 years, like Nike's probably not in business, right? Or
Yeah.
Apple, like, I mean, Apple comes out with something, you know, new devices or products every year, but they're also making changes to their operating systems constantly. You know, they're not saying, okay, in 3 years maybe we'll not launch the new iPhone and we'll do some new things to it.
I mean, they push updates all the time.
Right.
You got to think about that. Like there's always, I mean, a website should be just like any software development. You're constantly making small changes until you have a major upgrade.
Right, but we don't think about it that way. Like as a society, like we don't think about our website in that same manner, which is kind of mind-blowing.
Well,
I don't see any other tool questions. How about you, Trey?
no, I think that's all the questions that we had. Anyone else? Any other last parting thoughts or questions?
Great.
This has been awesome, as always. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining, Eunice. Really appreciate it.
It's my favorite place to be is learning. It's like, you know, it's always good.
Right.
If we're not, it's kind of, I guess that could be the same, you know, the same analogy is if we're not always learning and always improving ourselves, you know, instead of upgrading every 2 or 3 years, how do we get good at what we're doing?
That's a
Yeah.
great point.
You got to invest in yourself.
So, you know, we
Really
should
great
apply this growth strategy to ourselves as well.
I'm curious, Eunice, are there any other topics you'd love to have us do a session on in the future?
Oh my gosh, I could go into a million. So I'm the marketing manager for my company. I was hired because of my affinity for HubSpot. And we are working with another company on, they manage our website. And so they're in the process of rebuilding, unfortunately on Drupal. So I'm learning Drupal, which has been fun.
Oh, wow.
It's not marketer friendly at all. So the point that you made, Dustin, about making sure that your CMS is marketer friendly, top notch. I mean, the reason we're using Drupal is because there's a lot of features that WordPress just doesn't support that our company uses. So anyway, I could probably come up with ideas because, like I said, I'm always wanting to learn.
Well, yeah, feel free to shoot them over through LinkedIn or email. That's kind of the cool thing about this group is HubSpot provides, you know, their senior execs too, and we have quite a bit of access between the teams, between Dustin, Yvonne, and myself. There's a ton of different topics that we can talk about. So yeah, whatever might interest you, we're always open to ideas.
Yeah, or if I had any of those pain points where I'm like, I really wish that I could do this better. There's always a better way, right? Like,
Yeah.
There's always a better way. And I'm really good at picking the most challenging, weirdest way of developing anything possible. And everyone's like, well, did you know that there's this way that's like so much easier?
Absolutely.
So, cool. Well, thank you guys for your time today.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Have a good day.
Everyone have a great week.
Thanks.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.